Welcome to Across the Goal Line, a sports podcast brought to you by diehard fans, and today we bring you the following. NASCAR from Talladega as the field in the chase was reduced to 8 drivers as Homestead fast approaches. We'll look at the World Series as the Indians took Game 1 at home last night. The college football and NFL train keeps on rolling as we review last week for both and take a look at the upcoming week and provide some of our picks for the best games of this upcoming weekend. And to cap the show off today, we have the WWE. They're making a return to the show after not being featured last week, as Hell in a Cell will take place this Sunday from Boston with a triple main event that features a trifecta of Hell in a Cell matches. So stay tuned for that. And before we get into anything else, let's give you the results from last week's Question of the Week, in which we asked who will win the World Series. And it was pretty much split down the middle almost, but the Indians eked out over the Cubs 57% of the vote they got over the Cubs 43%. And that pick, at least today, Wednesday, after Game 1, looks pretty good at the moment. But we'll have to see. Game 2 is tonight. We'll get more into that later. But now let's get the show underway with some NASCAR. And for that, I'm going to throw it over to Luke.
Well, how you doing today, Corey? My voice is starting to come back to normal. I'll get more into that here in a minute. I'm not sick, so don't want anybody to think I'm sick. I'm not. Just normal voice for me after I go to a Penn State game. Like I said, I'll get more into that in a second. As you said, NASCAR is at Talladega, and the chase got wound down to the final 8 drivers. Joey Logano won at Talladega, and the 4 drivers that didn't make it were Austin Dillon, who I had picked to win at Talladega last week, Martin Truex Jr., who probably had the best season of his career, Chase Elliott and Brad Keselowski, and then the next 8 drivers that are in the round of 8 that advanced will be competing in the next 3 races, which are at Martinsville, Texas, and Phoenix, and then the one final race at Homestead, Miami, right before Thanksgiving, as you said. But those 8 drivers are Jimmy Johnson, the Busch Boys, Kurt and Kyle, Joey Logano, who had just won, Matt Kenseth, Kevin Harvick, Carl Edwards, and then Denny Hamlin, who snuck in there at the end. And then with that, let's move on to the World Series. As you said, the Indians won last night, Game 1 at home at Progressive Field. And the last time the losing team in Game 1 of the World Series was shut out, the winner in Game 1 went on to win the series and swept. Back in 1990, that was whenever the Cincinnati Reds beat the Oakland Athletics. And Lou Piniella, of all people, was managing those Reds, and then he went on to manage the Cubs there about 10 years ago. But yeah, figured I'd throw that in there. Indians won last night, and neither team has been to the World Series, let alone win, in a very, very long time. The Cubs haven't been since 1945, and then the Indians since 1997. So recently, but it's still, that's 19 years. Yeah. And then both teams haven't won since 1908, 1948, respectively, for the Cubs and Indians there. So I'll throw it back to you, and we'll move on here with the World Series.
Yeah, the Indians win Game 1 at home. They're behind Corey Kluber. They're pitching 6 pretty strong innings, struck out 8 of the first 9. Pretty dominant performance. You struck out 8 of the first 9 batters in the game. That's impressive. No one's ever done that.
No, it was first time ever in World Series history.
So he looked dominant from the get-go, and then Miller came in, got himself into a bind a couple of times late in the game, in the 7th and the 8th inning.
It's Miller time.
Bases loaded in the 7th, and got out of that.
I had to play Wild Thing whenever he came out of the bullpen, though. With the movie Major League, and they should have had Charlie Sheen, Ricky Vaughn, throw out the first pitch last night, but they didn't. But I just had to play Wild Thing whenever they had to bring in their first relief pitcher, after Kluber went down. As you said, Kluber struck out for the first 8 of 9, and then on the other side, Cubs, Lester started out slow, but then he got things rolling, but then he was pulled in the 5th inning. And then after that, Chicago just kept on going to a different pitcher, it seemed like, every inning, and they couldn't get on track. They almost did. Had bases loaded twice, I believe it was.
Well, they bases loaded in the 7th, and then might have been bases loaded in the 7th. I know at least runners on the corners in the 8th.
Okay. And then you know, and then Miller time, you know, Miller shut him down, as you said. So yeah,
he had 40-some pitches for him in that game. Maybe
the least number of pitchers he's thrown all postseason too, in any of his appearances.
But yeah, he's been dominant this entire postseason and his postseason career. He hasn't given up a run in his entire postseason career up to this point. That's with the Orioles, the Yankees, and now the Indians now. He has, like, I think it's 13, maybe even more innings with the Indians this postseason, not giving up a run. So he's been dominant. May or may not see him tonight. It depends, I guess, on how he's feeling. He obviously will. It's more so going to be down to Terry Francona whether he wants to play him or not. If the situation calls for it.
If the situation calls for it, yeah. If they need him, you know, he'll play.
Bauer, who's the starter tonight, has a good game, and they need someone to shut down the Cubs late, then you got to throw Miller out there. I mean, he's your best relief pitcher.
Why
Probably
not?
your best pitcher except for maybe Kluber, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, he won the ALS MVP for crying out loud.
Yeah.
As a relief pitcher, I mean, that's impressive. So you don't see that too often. So.
And the Yankees, they had to do what they had to do at the deadline there to get rid of, you know, some guys and help rebuild for the future. But I'm, you know, probably sure they're kicking themselves right now, thinking that they, you know, could have, you know, had this guy for the future. I mean, the Yankees have money; they could have paid up, but, you know, they didn't. And they, you know, dealt him and got some good prospects and players in return. And then I was thinking last night too, watching the game. Remember at the deadline too, Jonathan Lucroy from Milwaukee.
Yeah.
He was traded to Cleveland, but he denied it.
Yeah.
Declined it.
Went to Texas.
And went to Texas. Texas lost to the Blue Jays in the playoffs, and then Cleveland beat Toronto, and then Cleveland's in the World Series. So I bet you Jonathan Lucroy is sitting back too, kicking himself, thinking, "Oh, I could be playing in the World Series right now for the Cleveland Indians."
Yeah, but it was Perez, their catcher, who was really good last night. Had 2 home runs for the Indians. So I mean, if Lucroy was there, then Perez wouldn't have been there.
First player since he's the third player in World Series history too to have 2 home runs in the same game with Manny Ramirez and who was the other one they said? Jim Thome.
Is that for the Indians?
For in World Series. It might be for the Indians though.
Because they both played for the Indians.
They did.
Obviously.
I agree.
So that's where I'm coming with.
Yeah, it might be the Indians, but it might be the Indians. I'm pretty sure it was. I don't remember, but because all they said was first time ever in World Series history. He's the third player ever to. Excuse me, my voice is so bad, as I said, and I'm not sick. To hit 2 home runs in the same game in a World Series game. So
I guess that just kind of comes down to whether Manny's was when he was like in 2004 with the Red Sox or back when he was still on the Indians early in his career. Because Thome was with the Indians pretty much his entire career. Only until later he was like with the White Sox and maybe the Phillies, I think.
Played for the Twins too.
The Twins.
Maybe.
I think the Twins.
I think all 4 of those teams he played for. I think he did play for the Phillies too.
Yeah, so it depends on what those guys were at, but I mean those are all Indians. I mean it definitely could have been just an Indian. So who knows? I guess we won't really dispute that's not really a big deal. I mean one of the big stories. I mean as a Cubs fan, you got to kind of be worried a little bit at the moment because you're like some are definitely probably thinking, oh no, not this again. We made it this far, now we're going to lose because get shut out. 24 of the last 28 who won Game 1 have won the World Series.
Yeah.
So you got to be kind of worried, but at the same time, Lester he's a good pitcher, but maybe not your best. Best of the best.
Last night was his first loss in a World Series appearance in his career because he was 3-0 with Boston.
With Boston, yeah. Well, Boston, they swept the one year.
They did.
The Cardinals, and then not the Cardinals.
The Rockies.
The Rockies
in 2007.
07.
Yeah. And then in 2013 he was still there when they played St. Louis.
If I remember correctly, that was in maybe a 5 or 6 game series. So, I mean, I'll digress on that. But yeah, they got shut out. As I was saying, the pitching staff of Chicago is a lot deeper than the Indians' rotation,
and that's why Joe Madden went to his bullpen early with Lester. I thought with Lester. Not doing so hot last night. Like I said, he started out slow. They have more depth in the bullpen than the Indians do, so I think that's why he could, he can do that.
But I mean, we've seen postseasons past.
I agree with you. But then Andrew Miller too, on the same hand,
Yeah.
He might, equal, 2, maybe 3 of the Cubs.
That's what I was getting at.
relief
We've seen
pitchers,
it seasons past. Just one pitcher can make the difference.
Exactly.
Look at Madison Bumgarner
2
a couple years
ago.
ago.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
And now the same thing's coming up, too, with Kluber. He started Game 1. Cleveland still hasn't announced a Game 4 starter. And then if the series goes 7, he could possibly start Game 7. Just think, Game 1 was last night, Tuesday night. Game 4 is Saturday night in Chicago, and then Game 7 is next Wednesday, November 2nd, back in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Corey Kluber would be the first pitcher since Kurt Schilling in 2001 to make 3 starts in the World Series in the 7 games there.
That would be impressive.
That would be impressive.
But yeah, Cubs fan, you got
first
shut
time
out.
in 15 years.
Another thing on the good side for Cubs fan, I mean, they did get shut out. They did have instances where they could have, but Miller shut them down. We already alluded to that. Bases loaded, runners in the corners.
7th and 8th. Yeah.
7th and 8th. They had amazing chances, but they just couldn't capitalize. But still, they were shut out twice against the Dodgers in the last series and came back to win. So, I mean, this is nothing new for them.
It's one game. It's
one game doesn't
baseball,
make a series,
first team to 4 wins the whole series.
But still, that stat looming over it, 24 last 28, and the like. I mean, you get no runs in the first game. I mean, it's got to be a big hit to you. But of course, I mean, anything's possible. Of course,
that's why
we all know that. That's why we play the game. The Cubs are obviously the best team out of the NL, and they did it through the postseason, through the regular season too. I mean, they're obviously destined to be here and maybe win this. Who knows? But at the moment, after this first game, you got to be kind of worried, I think.
Well, you say that. I mean, I think Cubs fans should be actually happy because they haven't been in the World Series since 1945, since after World War II. And then they've won in 108 years. And then Cleveland, as I said, they haven't been since 97.
And
the
Cubs fans, it's that thirstiness for that World Series title.
It's 174 years combined between the two.
It was amazing.
Between the two teams, I was about to say schools.
You look at it, I mean, whoever wins is going to be a big occasion for either city or whatever.
Yeah,
so
whoever wins is going to have a hell of a party, I'll tell you that. If the Indians win, there's going to be a huge-ass party at Napoli's house. And then, probably in the Cubs' new, what do you want to call it? Not dugout, but clubhouse. Renovated, recently. And just to think, Wrigley opened in 1916. The Cubs have never won a World Series at Wrigley Field. They've played World Series games. They played in They played six World Series matchups in Wrigley Field, but they lost all 6 of them. After 1916 to 1945. So in a span of 30 years, 29 years, they played another 6 World Series series, but they lost them all. And that's why the story is, real fascinating. And as you said, Cubs fans, it's bigger for them than the Indians, and especially too with Cleveland, winning the NBA championship this past year, with the Cavaliers beating the Golden State Warriors. They came back from down 3-1, and then if the Indians do win, it would be the 3rd time that the same city won the NBA title and the World Series in the same year. 1988, the LA Lakers and the Dodgers won, and then 2002, the LA Lakers won, and then the LA Angels won. So it is bigger for the Cubs, but as you said, it's been 108 years. I actually got some interesting facts. I think it's going to blow your mind and everybody's mind. And if you haven't heard it, before or read it, look it up after you get done and listen to this. It's pretty interesting. But before I do that, as you said, Game 1 was in Cleveland last night. 2, 6, and 7 are also in Cleveland. Cincinnati won the All-Star game over the summer. If you want to go to some of these games, you're going to have to, pay up. You might have to take out another mortgage on your house. You might have to take out a loan. Ticket prices are absolutely ridiculous, but understandable at the same time because, Cubs haven't been since 1945, Indians since 97, but neither have won since 1908, 1948. Over $1,000 a ticket for games that are in Cleveland, but 3 to 4 times that for the 3 games that are in Chi-Town. Yes, $3,000 to $4,000 for one ticket, and those would be games 3, 4, and 5. But it's, as I said, it's ridiculous, but it's understandable as well, as I said. So some getting into interesting facts now. Things that didn't exist the last time the Cubs were in the World Series in 1945, the last time they won the pennant, and then the World Series. I know what I'm saying. About the number 108, the number of years it's been since the Cubbies last won the World Series, and then about Theo Epstein, who's the president of baseball ops for the Cubs. And now first with the things that didn't exist in 45, right after World War II, just to name a few of them. Joe Madden, he was born in 1954. The NBA was founded in 1946. Color television first aired in 1954. And then Alaska and Hawaii as U.S. states. Alaska to the United States on January 3rd, 1959 from Russia as the 49th state. And then Hawaii to the United States on August 21st, 1959 as the 50th and final state of the United States. Now with the number 108, as I said, this will probably blow your mind. I think it's really weird, but you can obviously figure that out for yourself. And as I said earlier, Cubs have not won a World Series at Wrigley. Wrigley opened in 1916. 1908, they're still playing at Westside Park in Chicago. So with the number 108, there are 108 stitches in a baseball. Cleveland's area code, is 216. Both the Cubs and the Indians have already won one title in 2016, seeking their second in the World Series. They obviously won the AL and the NL pennant. It's been 108 years since the Cubs won. You take 108 and times it by 2, what do you get, Corey?
216.
Exactly, you get 216, Cleveland's area code. So Chicago's playing Cleveland, kind of weird. The distance from both left field and right field foul poles to home plate at Wrigley Field is 108 meters. The movies Taking Care of Business and Back to the Future 2 both have the Cubs winning the World Series. Both movies are 108 minutes long. Now, however that's, predicted, that's just flat out weird, I think. Now, Cubs broadcast games which are transmitted from the top of Willis Tower in Chicago. Willis Tower is 108 stories tall. The World Series trophy is made of silver. Silver carries an atomic weight of 108. Now, going back to the Chicago mob, back in the 20s and 30s, Frank Nitti, who was the treasurer of Al Capone's organization, used to own the late great Harry Carey, announcer for the Cubs, restaurant building. And as I said, Carey was the radio/TV announcer for the Cubs late in his career. Also, he grew up in St. Louis, was a diehard Cardinals fan. He also worked for the White Sox, and then his grandson, who is still alive, works for the Atlanta Braves. But Capone's organization made $108 million a year. And then some notable dates: 10/8/1871. So you take out the slash, it'd be 108. 10/8/1871. The Great Chicago Fire starts and burns down the Cubs ballpark equipment and uniforms. 10/8, as I say, take out slash, 1908. The controversial Merkle makeup game. Cubs win the pennant and go on to the 1908 World Series. The team's last that they won. They won the title in 5 games that year, and this year Game 5 is in Chicago, and wouldn't it be something if they won on their home field. 10/8/1929, the first Cubs World Series game at Wrigley Field. 10/8/1945, the last time the Cubs won a World Series game, and also the day Billy Goat Tavern owner Willie Sianis sent P.K. Wrigley the "Who Smells Now" telegram, putting the curse on the Cubs because, as many people know, Wrigley did not want the goat in the suite and kicked him out, and then the curse was started after that. As I said, Cubs haven't been in the World Series since until now. And then before last night, it was 25,498 days since the Cubs last played a World Series game, which is a really long time. And then in 1908, last time the Cubs were in the World Series, Hershey's chocolate bar cost 2 cents. I don't even know what they are now. They're obviously more expensive than that. And then in 1948, last time they won the World Series, a movie ticket cost 48 cents. And then Theo Epstein, as I said, who is the president of baseball operations for the Chicago Cubs, was the general manager for the Boston Red Sox in 2004 when the Red Sox snapped their 86-year championship drought. You know who the Red Sox manager was in 2004, Corey? Terry Francona, exactly. Who's the manager of the Cleveland Indians right now?
Terry Francona.
Exactly. A little weird that, those guys, are coming back together, playing each other this year in the World Series. And they're trying to end that. The Indians are trying to end that 68-year drought. And then Francona, he also played for the Cubs during his career, which I thought was pretty interesting. So, this just shows you, some of this stuff might be real. If the Cubs do win, I will believe all this stuff. If they don't, I'm throwing it all out. So,
right.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. I thought all that stuff was real interesting. I didn't know what you had to think about it.
I won't go through that. I just want to kind of finish this off with just tonight, Game 2 in Cleveland, Bauer versus Arrieta.
It starts at 7 o'clock, too.
Yeah, due to possible rain coming in,
Yes.
so they moved up the game time tonight. So, Game 2 is the night. I don't know how this game's going to go. I mean, Arrieta hasn't been what he was the last season, the Cy Young winner. But he certainly probably is better than Bauer on a strictly just pitcher versus pitcher battle. It depends on how it goes tonight. We'll see if the Cubs bats can get it going tonight. If they can't, then they're in deep trouble. If they lose this game, for sure, they'll be in deep trouble. People will start definitely worrying then. They're probably some, if not a lot, or at least a little bit worried right now.
Yeah.
But if they lose tonight, they're going to be almost full-on panic mode because they're going to be like, oh no, here we go again.
Well, I mean, if they go down, 3-0, they obviously have to win out. It would be nice, as I said, for them to win and clinch the title in Chicago, Game 5, Sunday night. But, we'll have to see how, tonight plays out, really, and then go from there. And then Game 3 is Friday night in Chicago, so that place is going to be rocking probably more than what Cleveland was last night. The Cavs had their first game of the season. They unveiled their championship rings from last year, and then they raised the banner too. But Chicago's waited a long time for this, and I'm rooting for them. So hopefully they do win. And Game 7's next Wednesday night, and we'll record next Wednesday during the day. If the series goes 7, we'll have it for you in 2 weeks, the final results. And then, if the series is over, though, by this time next week, we'll obviously be talking about it. So, stay tuned with more World Series coverage here on Across the Goal Line.
Yep. And with that, we're going to move into our football for this week. We'll start with the college football week. Week 8, or week 9.
8.
Yeah, 8.
Week 8 review.
Yeah, week 8.
And then we get into week 9.
Yeah. Week 8's the NFL this week.
Yes.
Week 8 last week.
It is confusing. The NFL is always a week behind.
Yeah. Last week, college football, crazy things happened a little bit.
I'd say so. My voice is still Still bad, as I said.
Yeah, but we'll get into it. Biggest upset this week for me is SMU knocking off Houston. Houston was the 11th team in the country this week, past week. Now they're not even in it now because of this loss. So huge loss for them. Forget the final score. No, it wasn't that close though.
38-16.
38-16 to SMU. Not a good loss at all for Houston. Now they're out of the rankings now. So
yeah,
obviously a huge loss.
Yeah, 2 losses. They lost to Navy a couple weeks ago.
Navy, but I mean that one.
But Navy's
pretty good.
Navy's good.
They're a tricky team.
They are ranked.
Yeah, they are.
Houston, they were one of my disappointing teams this week. We'll get into more here in a second. Big upset for me. Everyone's going to say Penn State over Ohio State, but I think I was the only true Penn State fan that picked Penn State over Ohio State. Who knows? Everyone has a chance. That's why they play the games. The game is decided on the field, not on paper. Ohio State was 19-point favorite. Just shows you anything can happen on any given day. And that's for any sport, and I've been saying that ever since I started watching sports because it's true. As I said, because it happens all the time. I know I've said that on here plenty of times as well. Upsets happen all the time, just don't know when they'll happen. Ohio State's not playing that well right now, and Urban Meyer even said it, so don't get on me for saying that when everybody knows it's true. Hell, even their own head coach said it, for God's sakes. But Ohio State still has a chance, I think. Corey, they obviously need to win out and win the Big Ten championship game, and then they'll be in the college football playoff. It's good that they lost now in October rather than in November like they did last year versus Michigan State at home, and then not getting in the playoff. Michigan State got in the playoff, and then they got blown out by Alabama in the Cotton Bowl. But biggest upset, though, I'd have to say Auburn over Arkansas because the final score is 56-3. That's pretty bad if you ask me. Was a ranked versus ranked game, 21-17. And Auburn has been sneaking up there, if you ask me, too. In the rankings since the beginning of the season. They did lose to Clemson, but look at Clemson. They're in the top 4.
Defeated.
Exactly. Top 4, so that loss isn't, that bad. And especially if you keep winning. And we talked about, that last week some. But 56-3, that's pretty bad. Also, LSU beat Ole Miss, another ranked matchup, 25-23, and LSU won 38-21. And LSU might have their guy in Ed Ogeron. If you didn't know, he's the interim head coach for Ole Miss right after they fired Houston, not about 8 years ago, I'd say. And then he was also the interim head coach for USC after they fired Lane Kiffin a couple years ago. And then he decided to come to LSU and become the defense coordinator for the Tigers. But LSU does have a tough stretch coming up with games at Alabama, Arkansas, the makeup game with Florida that was supposed to happen last month, a couple weeks ago, and then Texas A&M on Thanksgiving, and then their regular season is over. So we'll have to see if Ogeron's head coach come next year for LSU. And to think, everybody talks too soon about this, but really this is our job, to do this, to predict what's going to happen and discuss everything. But it's right after everybody was talking about who LSU is going to hire to replace Les Miles. I mean, give the guy a chance. Why don't you? What do you have for best game, Corey?
Best game this week, I have 2 on different sides of the spectrum, you could say.
All right.
Because on the one hand, I have Oklahoma over Texas Tech.
Oh, that's a shootout.
The biggest shootout I've ever seen, 66-59 or something like that.
Yeah,
final score.
That's what the final score was.
Baker Mayfield had over 500 yards and 7 touchdowns.
Playing against his former team too. Remember, he was a starter at Texas Tech and then transferred to Oklahoma.
And then the opposing quarterback had 730 yards himself through the air.
Ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
Almost all of his team's yards.
Those Big 12 schools, the Big 10 knows how to play defense. The Big 12 doesn't.
But both teams had exactly, I think, 850 yards exactly. Both teams did, even on yards.
That's ridiculous.
So 1,700 yards in the entire game. But the other game, Big Ten game.
You won't see that, for some schools for a total of 3 games.
Yeah.
He had it in 1 game this past weekend.
And then the other side of it, Big Ten game. Wisconsin beat Iowa 17-9.
Yeah.
Classic Big Ten matchup.
Yep.
Defense, just hard-hitting game, low-scoring game, exciting game.
That's what you want to see. But best game for me, obviously, as I said, my voice is awful right now, but this is normal for me after a Penn State game. Best game, Ohio State at Penn State, no doubt. Penn State handed Urban Meyer his first road loss as the Buckeyes head coach. He had won the past 20. Ohio State had also won 78 straight games when leading by 14 or more points in the fourth quarter. Ohio State was up 21-7 to start the fourth. Penn State picked up their first win versus the top two teams since 1990 as well when they went to South Bend and beat Notre Dame and Lou Holtz coach team. First win at home versus a top two team since 82 whenever Penn State beat Tom Osborne in Nebraska by a score of 27-24. If you remember, Penn State won there and Joe Paterno's first national championship that season as well. Now, I'm not saying Penn State's going to win the national title this year, but I mean, it would be nice, and there's still a chance that they could make a playoff, or if not, go to a good bowl game, possibly the Rose Bowl. There is a chance. Or, one of those New Year's Six bowls. They do need to win out and get some help from others, but there is a chance. As James Ellsworth says, Corey, any man with two hands has a fighting chance, right?
Yeah.
So there's a chance, and that's why they play the games. As I said, the game's decided on the field, not on paper. Ohio State was a 19-point favorite. They lost by 3. And this was also the best game I've ever been to, hands down as well. And I've been to some, good games. You can check, my Facebook and Instagram. Twitter, it's on there too, but you have to really scroll down through that timeline there. I did that all way back in March when I put it on Twitter. As I said, my voice is bad as how it normally is. I thought it would have been back by now, but it's not. And then the play of the game had to have been that blocked field goal, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Marcus Allen got up, blocked it. Grant Hanley ran 60 yards for a touchdown. The whole stadium was rocking, shaking, rattling, rolling. But Penn State beat Ohio State, and I predicted it last week, as I said. So we are.
All right. Impressed this week. You already mentioned them. It's Auburn for me. Actually dominating Arkansas, 56-3. I mean, it's a ranked versus ranked matchup, but a dominating fashion win like that, only boosting them up the rankings. Moved up 6 spots this week to 15.
Yep.
And now, I mean, you alluded to it as well. Win some games down the stretch here. Win out. Hell, they could make a run at it.
Hell, Auburn could be in the playoff.
Play like this.
Come December. They got to beat Alabama. Alabama's got to probably lose another one.
That's the one game.
As I said, that's what Penn State could possibly be in it as well. They got to win out. And the key game, I think, is that Iowa game come November 5th in 2 weeks. Penn State hosts the Hawkeyes. And then the following week, Michigan goes to Iowa City. So then, say Penn State beats Iowa, and then Iowa beats Michigan, and then Ohio State beats Michigan at the end of the year. Penn State wins out. Ohio State loses to somebody else. Penn State's going to own that tiebreaker over both those teams, Michigan and Ohio State. Penn State's going to be representing the East in the Big Ten title game then. Even though Michigan beat Penn State, shellacked them on September 24th, 49-10. Penn State beat Ohio State, and then Ohio State beat Michigan, and then that's what I'm saying, the Iowa game. Penn State beats Iowa and then wins out. They got to have Iowa beat Michigan, and then Ohio State beat Michigan. So anything can happen. And still got a whole month of football to be played.
Exactly. So,
and that's why they play the games. It's not decided on paper.
And you had Auburn too for your impressive team this week?
Yeah, I have Auburn impressed just because of 56-3, and then disappointed I had Arkansas, along with Houston, as I said, because on the flip side of that, you lost 56-3.
Exactly. And I can definitely see that
at home.
Yeah. My disappointment for this week is a team that we picked the game last week, but I forgot about it. But Stanford lost again this week, 10-5.
Yes,
to
10-5.
Colorado, which on itself isn't like large, but 5 points in this game.
That's not a baseball score from last year.
No, it isn't. I mean, that's another loss for the Stanford Cardinal. And over the last 4 games, they've averaged just 11 points. Just 11. And that ranks...
Over the past 4 games?
Over the past 4 weeks.
That's
And
awful.
That ranks 127th out of 128.
That's even worse.
So they're almost dead last in points scored a game the last 4 weeks. And you're talking about a team that was ranked highly coming into the season, was ranked highly partway through the season, then lost to Washington. And after that, it's just been downhill. They had, at the time, and even last year, Heisman contender Christian McCaffrey on the team, and still do.
And he hasn't been himself.
Well, he hasn't been what he was last year.
One player doesn't, win football games. It takes the whole team.
But, normally it's a quarterback that does.
It takes 3 aspects of football: offense, defense, and special teams to win the game.
Well, in college football, sometimes one player can definitely make or break a game. It's typically a quarterback, though, if it is one player, like a Lamar Jackson or something, for instance. He's a guy that can just win a game for you on his own for the most part, But like a running back like McCaffrey, who you and me kind of are on the record saying that he's not going to be much in the NFL if he does go to the NFL at all.
Well, he will go to the NFL. He's not going to be good though.
He's not going to be anything like he was last year, at least.
No.
He's not even that. He's not even that way this year.
He could be like a Darren Sproles. He's not going to be a
Darren Sproles or I would say a Reggie Bush in terms of smaller back, more of a pass catcher, especially when he was at the Saints. The Reggie Bush, that is. I never liked Reggie Bush at the Saints, to be honest, because he wasn't a runner. We picked him really high in that draft, number 2, I think.
Yeah.
In that draft, and
luckily you got him because I'm still surprised Houston didn't take him at 1. They took Mario Williams,
and I mean, Mario Williams was all right for them, and then he had a pretty good year. Was last or the year before that with the Bills, he had a pretty good year not too long ago. Williams did. I mean,
and now he's down in Miami.
So now he's down in Miami. So
I thought you were talking about Reggie Bush. Sorry.
Reggie Bush, but Reggie Bush, he hasn't done anything really.
And he's playing in Buffalo now.
He's playing in Buffalo. Scored a touchdown or a 2-point conversion, I think it was.
It was a touchdown. It was a 1-yard touchdown, I thought.
Oh, I thought it was a 2-point conversion at the end of the game after a touchdown. I'm not sure.
Whatever.
I don't care. But either way, getting off Reggie Bush, but still, I was talking about McCaffrey, similar to Bush in that aspect. Would probably be more of a pass catcher.
Yeah.
But I never liked him in New Orleans because we picked him so highly, and he was supposed to be our running back, but he never really was our running back because then Pierre Thomas came in, and he was the actual running back, and he did all the stuff that Reggie Bush could do, except he could run, was the thing. And then he took over. So
I don't see McCaffrey going back to him. I don't see him as
that's the moral of the story.
A 3-down back. He'll be he could be a 3rd down back.
A 3rd down back, yeah.
But
that's a good.
He's not going to be a ground and pound. You're not going to give him the ball every single time.
You wouldn't be able to take it.
I
mean, there's places for guys like that in the league, like Sproles,
try to win the game on his back.
A Danny Woodhead or a Dexter McCluster, even.
Yeah.
Those type of guys, they can flourish. I mean, Woodhead's a pretty good example with his time in New England and even in San Diego. He's hurt this year.
I wouldn't be surprised if New England takes McCaffrey.
He would fit nicely into their system, I think. You'd have Blunt running it, and then he comes in, help have another target for Brady.
And they got Dion Lewis coming back, too.
Dion Lewis, which is what he's doing right now, more of a pass catcher than a runner. Because, of course, Blunt is their top guy in the running back position.
Yeah.
Actually running the ball, that is. So, but there's a place for a guy like him in the league, but he won't be no superstar. I mean, he's not even a superstar this year in college, so he's played himself out of the Heisman.
Just shows you how fast things can change.
I mean, we see it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you take an extra year, and then you're not as good the next year, and your draft stock falls. You see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
In football, basketball, pretty much any sport.
Hockey, golf, NASCAR. No, I'm just
collegiately.
I know.
I guess basketball and NFL are the only two ones that really.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That kind of fits, but either way. We'll move on now. Week 9 this week. Luke, you got the games for us. Start us off.
All right, sounds good, Corey. FCS, I went 2-2 last week. You went 3-1. We're both 21-6 on the year. You're catching up to me now. We got 4 games this week. I'm not gonna really give an explanation for any of these. I don't know.
It's hard to give an explanation for these.
I say that, but then I know some stuff. Stony Brook at New Hampshire.
Stony Brook, New Hampshire. I don't know anything about either. I don't know anything about either of these teams. I'm just gonna go New Hampshire.
Okay, I'm also gonna go New Hampshire. Chip Kelly, offense coordinator, from '99 to 2006, I believe it was.
It was.
Fordham at Lehigh next.
Fordham at Lehigh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lehigh's down by Philly. Fordham's up in New York City.
Give me Lehigh.
You're going to take Lehigh, probably since they're from Pennsylvania. I'm going to take Fordham. Joe Moorhead, Penn State's offense coordinator, was the head coach for Fordham the past 4 seasons. Eastern Illinois at Jacksonville State.
I feel like I know more about Jacksonville State than anything. I feel like Jacksonville State's more familiar to me, so Jacksonville State.
All right, I saw Eastern Illinois play in 2009. Penn State beat them 52-3. Also, the alma mater of Tony Romo, Sean Payton, your Saints head coach. Now, I'm not taking Eastern Illinois because they had Tony Romo. Tony Romo absolutely sucks. Dak Prescott, he should start over him. Still throwing that in there.
It still needs to be asked.
So, I'm going to take Eastern Illinois since I saw him play before.
All right.
And then next, and finally, certainly not least, Montana, Eastern Washington. We've had these teams on here before.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Grizz. I think I've taken them every single time.
Eastern Washington?
Eastern Washington.
Yes, yeah. Eastern Washington, yeah.
All right.
I had to get my facts right. I had to get my the correct team there. I had to make sure it was Eastern Washington.
Yeah. I don't think they have a Western or Northern or Southern Washington, so...
I had to make sure I didn't say the wrong team.
Yeah. Okay, now FBS... 9-5 for both of us, 57-41 for me on the year, 63-35 for you on the year. First game Thursday night again, Virginia Tech at Pitt.
Virginia Tech at Pitt.
It's not in Blacksburg; it's at Heinz Field. Pittsburgh.
Should be a good game.
Should be a real good game.
Should be a really good game.
I thought the
pretty good.
Virginia Tech game last week on Thursday night against Miami would have been a better game, but.
Miami's on the downs.
They blew them out.
Way down now. Miami, they've lost
4-3.
Last 3 games.
Yeah.
So
starting with that.
Starting back on the Florida State, yeah, when they were in the top 10. But Pitt always seems to be in close games. It seems like lately and throughout the season, it should be a really good game. I'm gonna lean towards Virginia Tech though. They destroyed Miami last week. It's not looking as impressive though. Of course, that was Miami's 3rd straight loss. Yeah. But still, I'm gonna go Virginia Tech slight edge over Pitt.
All right. I would love to take Pitt. It's good that they're 5-2, same record as Penn State right now. Penn State still should have won that game, but they didn't. We'll get you next year. But anyways, if you lose to somebody, you always want them to win because it makes you look better, no matter what the score of that game was. Look at Michigan and look at Pitt. They're both, doing good. So both Penn State losses are good losses. They're not bad losses. But I can't take Pitt. You know that, Corey. Eat shit, Pitt. I'm taking Virginia Tech all day.
All right.
Next is Ohio at Toledo. I'm going to take Ohio. I saw them play. Frank Solich, 2012 is when I saw him play. Frank Solich, head coach. Former Nebraska head coach, was run out of Lincoln back after 2003 or 2004, I believe it was. So I'm taking the Bobcats over the Rockets.
Give me Toledo.
Take Toledo. All right, I took Toledo last week. They played
Central Michigan.
They played Central Michigan. That's right. But this week I'm taking Ohio. Next game we had last week. Team we had last week. Navy played Memphis. I picked Navy. They won. I'm gonna take Navy again. They go down to Tampa to play South Florida, who lost to Temple last week in Philly. Good game. There's also another good game last Friday night between Cal and Oregon. Went to double overtime, but that doesn't really have anything to do with this week. We've been seeing some real good games lately. But this week, Navy, I think they'll beat South Florida. I've seen both these teams play as well.
All right. Give me Navy in this one. They're a tricky team.
All right. Next, Mountaineers, West Virginia, go to Stillwater to play the Cowboys, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, Central Michigan loss, not looking too good. But West Virginia 6-0 for the first time since, what was it, 2005? 2006, I think it was, and then they finished 11-2 that year. Give me West Virginia. I believe they could win out. As I said last week, they could win out. They could lose out. But I think they're playing real well. They do got a tough stretch coming up. They got play with Oklahoma State, Texas, Oklahoma, and Baylor to close out the year. So we'll have to see. West Virginia could sneak in the playoff. They're ranked 10th in the country right now. They just got to win out and win the Big 12. But we'll have to see.
I got to keep that Big 12 hope alive. West Virginia, I think, I hope will be the front runner for that Big 12 push. So I'm going to take them in this one. They've been getting it done defensively the last couple weeks here against Texas Tech, and now they're going to, and TCU it was, holding both of those to under 20 points. I mean, they held Texas Tech 17 last week. Oklahoma gave up 59 to them the next week. So high-powered offense in Texas Tech. TCU, maybe not so much, but I think they're going to hold Oklahoma State down in their own home stadium, and they're going to walk away with another win this week.
All right. Next is an in-state rivalry between Michigan and Michigan State. I remember last year this was the game with that botched punt that we've talked about a lot on here.
You have more.
Well,
so.
Yeah, but you know me though. Michigan State, they've lost 5 in a row now. They're 2-5. I don't know what the hell's wrong with them. They're just not playing good football right now. So go blue. It's going to be closer than what people think.
Yeah.
It's that rivalry game. So yeah, Michigan over Michigan State in a close one.
Yeah, it should be a close one. That in-state rivalry between these two teams, it's going to add a lot of emotion, a lot of, I don't want to say firepower, but I am. Firepower, I guess. I don't know what that exactly means in this situation, but either way. But yeah, Michigan definitely is way better than Michigan State. Michigan State hasn't looked that good. But yeah, definitely a close game in this one. I do believe.
All right, another rivalry game. It's always played in Jacksonville, Florida. Somewhat, it is in between the two schools. It's not on the Florida-Georgia line. That's also a good band, but it's in between the two schools. We got Florida versus Georgia as that's rivalry game. These two teams play there every year. It's always on CBS. SEC has CBS games. Vern Lundquist will be on the call. He's retiring after this year, so we wish him the best in the future. But Georgia just, first year under Kirby Smart, I thought they would be doing so much better than what they are right now. They're still, I'm telling you, they're going to regret getting rid of Mark Richt. And then he's lost 3 straight down at Miami, but they'll be fine. But I'm going to take Florida in this one just because, as I said, Georgia, I thought they would be so much better than what they are right now. But this game is always close. So I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to overtime. Some wild play happens, like, that blocked field goal last week in the Penn State game. So Hail Mary to end it. We've seen a couple of those already this year. But I'm going to take Florida over Georgia.
Yeah, I'm also going to have to go Florida in this one. Speaking of Georgia, they were hanging around there in the top 25 there for a little bit. Had a lot of close calls with some teams that they probably shouldn't have. That was a big reason why they were stagnant there. But the last couple out of the rankings now. Florida, they're another team that could maybe, who knows, 14th right now. They could maybe rise up depending on how well they do down the stretch and how well other teams from the SEC fare as well. But
they'd obviously have to win out and have somebody lose.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think Florida in this one, and as you said, a close game.
All right. Next, this is where College Game Day is at this week. They go back to Salt Lake City for the second straight year. Last year they were there for the UCLA at Utah game. This year they're for Washington at Utah. So get up early if you're out in Salt Lake City and go to College Game Day. It's a fun experience. I've been to 2 of them before. But Washington, they're ranked, fourth in the country?
Fourth. They're in the playoff at the moment.
They're undefeated right now. And they go to Salt Lake City, as I said, to play Utah. I'm going to take Utah in upset.
All right.
Utah's a tough place to play. They beat Michigan to start the year last year at home in a close one, and then they beat UCLA, who, I thought they'd beat too, and, they were good last year. Lost to Nebraska, who's a, 6-loss team, or, 7-loss team, excuse me. In the bowl game, in the Foster Farms Bowl in San Francisco, in Santa Clara there, where the 49ers play at, but UCLA, they're just down this year. Jim Moore, he might not even be the head coach to come next year. Talking about the Bruins, but Utah, I think they'll pull the upset. I think Washington's going to lose, and I think the Pac-12, because Utah already has a loss. Say Washington loses, Stanford's not the same. Utah wins, the Pac-12 gets screwed over and doesn't get in the playoff. I know it's only the end of October, but they'd have to have a lot happen to a lot to happen to get back into contention for that. And if they lose, they're not going to drop far. Look at Ohio State. They went from 2 to 6.
Especially if it's a really close game. Obviously, that doesn't take away from them if it's a nice close game. But I'm going to go Washington in this game, though. They are ranked in the top 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, which is an impressive stat on its own. Jake Browning playing himself into Heisman contention with his recent performances. Been dominating teams as of late, starting back with Stanford, where they crushed them, and have continued that since. Should be a good game, though. Probably pretty close, I would imagine. Who knows? College football is crazy sometimes. Maybe it's a blowout. Who knows? But I'm going to keep Washington, and I think they might win out, make the college football playoff possibly.
All right. Next is Northwestern at Ohio State. Ohio State lost last week, as most people know, but following a loss at Ohio State, Urban Meyer's 15-0. And they put up 41.1 points a game and hold opponents to 18.5 points a game. But Northwestern right now, they're putting up 37.5 points a game. So this will be a good game. 3:30 on ESPN. I'm going to take Ohio State just because Urban is 15-0 following a loss. So, if I pick against them, I'm not that smart then. But it's going to be a real close game. Northwestern has one bad loss to Illinois State at home. They did lose to Western Michigan as well, but Western Michigan's 8-0 right now. PJ Fleck, I don't think he'll be rowing the boat with Western Michigan next year. He'll be rowing it somewhere else. But I really like Pat Fitzgerald as well in Evanston. But they're playing in Columbus. That place is going to be fired up, especially coming off a loss. And as I said, Urban's 15-0 following a loss. So go Bucks. Go Bucks.
Yeah, I'm going to Ohio State too for pretty much all the things you said. Those stats with Urban Meyer and haven't lost a game since after losing one in Ohio State. Also, the fact that they're going to be playing probably pissed a little bit after losing last week, so to speak. And the stadium's going to be fired up in Columbus. Northwestern's going to run to a buzzsaw, I think, this week in Ohio State. So Ohio State in this one, probably a double. I'm thinking bigger than you, probably, at least. I don't know what your margin of victory is in your head exactly, but I'm probably thinking...
I'm saying less than 10.
Less than 10? I'm saying double digits, though. I'm going to go double digits. So.
All right. What do we have next? Boise State at Wyoming. Boise State played BYU at home last week. Won by 1 point because BYU was so stupid and ran a fake punt inside their own 5-yard line. Yes, inside their own 5-yard line. Look it up. It was, oh my God, the worst play of all time. But they go to Wyoming, to Laramie, to play the Cowboys. Craig Bull, former North Dakota State head coach, is coaching Wyoming. I could see an upset here, but Boise State, they're just too good, I think. So I'm going to take Boise State over Wyoming, but we still got 3 games to pick. Kind of on the verge right now, so I might change my mind.
Well, for the first time on the show, I'm going to actually pick a out and out upset. I'm picking Wyoming in this game.
All right. Just because.
Well, I honestly think so. It will be a good game. Wyoming's 5-2.
Once I started talking there, I'm like, well, I should pick Wyoming.
Close game last week for Boise State.
Because
on their own home turf, the blue turf there.
Because what's Boise State ranked 14th right now?
13.
13?
Wyoming's playing good this year.
If they lose now, they're done.
They're probably not going to make it anyway.
Because they're not a Power 5.
Unless a lot of stuff happens, they're not going to make it even if they win out.
So, I mean, right now I'm going to stick with Boise State, but as I said, we've still got 3 games to pick. I might change my mind, so we'll see. Next, final Big Ten matchup of the week. Nebraska goes to Madison to play Wisconsin. Both teams got off last week. Nebraska beat Purdue by 13, and then Wisconsin only beat Iowa by 8. So this is going to be a classic Big Ten matchup. Low scoring, real fun to watch. It's at 7 o'clock on ESPN. And I think Nebraska's going to pull it out and go to 8-0. They're 7-0 for the first time since 2001, I think it is.
Yeah, this is the toughest game for me this week for picking. It's probably going to be on my best game of the week next week, probably. I mean, it'll classic Big Ten matchup, low scoring, as you said. It's probably definitely going to be like that. I flip-flopped, but I went Wisconsin in the end, being at home. And, I mean...
both places are tough places to play.
It's very tough in either place. I mean, it's going to be a really close game, but very, very slight edge to Wisconsin in this one. It can go either way, though, honestly, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Before we move on to Auburn Ole Miss, I am going to switch my pick to Wyoming over Boise State. I just have that feeling, that this is going to be another upset, this week. So Auburn Ole Miss, Auburn sneaking up there. We talked about it this week, along with last week as well. Ole Miss going down in the dumps. Hugh Freeze, I don't think he'll be there next year coaching. He might be at Texas, might be at LSU, might be who knows where. But I'm gonna take Auburn in this one. Gus Malzahn's he's really stepped it up as a head coach, and he saved his job. If you ask me.
Yeah, and as we already alluded to, Auburn's a team that can make it to the college football playoff. If things go their way,
they could.
15th right now, they're top 15, definitely in position to make something happen. Still get to play Auburn later on in the season, and like you said, Ole Miss, they lost a couple games here. They got back in the top 15, then they're back out of it again here in short order. A couple of losses to Arkansas, and then who was it last week? Were they the ones that played LSU?
For Ole Miss?
Yeah.
They lost to LSU last week.
Oh, it was LSU. For some reason I thought it was Mississippi State, but no, that was weeks ago. But yeah, so 2 losses in short order. Auburn on their way up. It's just one of those matchups where one team's going real hot, one team's not so much, and who knows? It might be another blowout. I doubt it, but yeah, who knows where this game's gonna go? But score-wise, I think Auburn's gonna win though.
All right, next and last game of the week, 8 o'clock ABC. Herbstreit and Fowler, Sam Ponder on the field. Clemson at Florida State in Tallahassee. This game, the past 3 years, has decided the one division winner, ECC. So it's going to be a fun game to watch. I'm going to take Clemson. I would like to take Florida State because then the ACC would be on the outskirts looking in after this week if that happens. Because Florida State, they have 2 losses.
Yeah,
you're not getting in the playoff with 2 losses.
Unless everyone else does.
Unless everybody else does, exactly. So it just depends on what happens and how other games play out. But I'm gonna take Clemson.
Yeah, I'm taking Clemson as well. Florida State, they're kind of getting themselves back into the rankings, though. They have 2 losses, 2 pretty tough losses.
What
Crushed by
12?
Louisville. Yeah, they're 12.
Excuse me.
Crushed by Louisville in like week, was it 2 or 3 on the road, and then lost to
Week 2, I think it was.
week 2, and then like either the next week or the week after the North Carolina, who has also kind of been on the downcline lately as well since losing to Virginia Tech a couple weeks ago themselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of them is a pretty good loss to Louisville, but the other one's not so much for North Carolina. Clemson, they've been looking great. They had that big win over Louisville. If they lose this game, it won't hurt them too much. They'll still be in prime position, but still, I got Clemson in this one. Might be a close game. I think it will be a close game. I mean, it is the primetime game of the week, so to speak, in college football, even though it's not game day. But either way, close game though. Maybe it could be a blowout for all I know.
Could be.
Maybe
It was in 2013 in Death Valley. Jameis Winston, when he came alive, he led the Seminoles, and they blew him out 52-13, I think it was.
I mean, it could be a blowout. I mean, I think the thing that's kind of keeping it close for me in my mind is the fact that it is in Florida State, or is it?
Yeah, it's in Tallahassee.
Tallahassee.
At,
what I was getting
at Florida State.
Yeah, at Florida State. That's what I was getting at. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from for that. So, but Clemson in the end. That's everything for college football this week. When we come back, we are going to get into the NFL and also WWE's Hell in a Cell.
Do you like hunting, fishing, or talking about the outdoors? If so, you need to check out Downriver Outdoors, an outdoors channel on YouTube that brings you some of the best footage of hunting and fishing from the backwoods of Central PA. They also tell some great outdoors stories. Be sure to subscribe to Downriver Outdoors on YouTube.